Okay, everybody. It took a while to get on YouTube Live. I'm sorry. Good morning, everybody. Um, I'm admitting the court interpreter. We don't have any defense attorneys present yet. Mr. Cifuentes, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you doing today?
I'm very frustrated.
Oh, yes, I mean, it's too early for that, but yes, I can understand.
I agree, but I am very frustrated with life right now.
Oh, in general,
But that's okay. That's okay, Mr. Cifuentes. It's going to get better, right?
right,
Mr.
right.
Olivas is coming in. Who is Mr. Olivas's client? Oh, he's taking care of one of,
Fernando Lopez, Judge, what the last one on the docket with an interpreter.
okay. We can start with that one.
All right, I gotta do first this time.
Oh,
You made me laugh. Thank you, Mr. Olivas, because I've been very frustrated and angry all morning long.
No,
Okay.
that would be Judge. Yo no hice nada, eh?
Thank you for giving me that belly laugh. I really appreciated it and I needed it. Okay.
Good.
Everybody, Mr. Cifuentes, I'm going to start the interpretation, right?
yes, ma'am. Does everybody know what's going to happen?
I'll let you do that. Do you have it now? Do you have the icon?
Yes, but I have not pressed OK on it. Did you guys get that little globe at the bottom of the screen? Okay, good.
Okay, go. So go ahead and instruct us right now, sir, please. I can't hear you. Oh, I need English. There it is. Everybody needs to be on the English channel, please. First of all, everybody get on the English channel. There's a little globe on the bottom in your options bar. Get on the English channel, everybody, please.
That's it.
Okay.
Click what flag? Do I have to do that too?
No.
No, we don't. We
No.
have English. We haven't. Okay. There it is. Okay. So click that little EN on the bottom of the options and then mute original audio, everybody.
Done it.
We have it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Now,
Fancy.
Mr. Cifuentes, are we ready? Did you have to give anybody any explanations?
Yes, we are.
Okay, he's talking to him in Spanish. That's communicating. It's weird, but it's cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah, cool.
You're not weird. You're not weird, Mr. Cifuentes. This Zoom is really incredible. It really is incredible. Mr. Sanchez, I just allowed you in. Mr. Sanchez, can you talk to me?
Good morning, Judge.
Mr. Sanchez, can you talk?
Judge, can you hear me?
Yeah, you have to go to the bottom of the interpreter, the bottom, and put English channel, please, for you. Go to the bottom.
Good morning, Judge.
Good morning. There you are. Okay. Now the other thing you have to do is go to that EN and then unmute original audio or mute original audio. Mute original audio. Do that too, Mr. Sanchez, okay?
I just did, Judge.
Good, we're good. Okay, we're gonna take care of Mr. Olivas's client first. It is Fernando Lopez, 2020, well, let me just state, I'm sorry because I'm on a new Zoom invite. Is there anyone here that does not want, that has an objection participating with Zoom and YouTube Live? Anybody? Mr. Sanchez, you're brand new. Mr. Olivas?
No
Anybody?
objection, Judge.
Objection? Okay.
No objection, Judge.
Very well. Thank you both. Let the record reflect that both parties have not objected to the proceedings, and I want everybody to understand that we are on YouTube Live to comply with the Texas Open Courts provision. Okay. With that being said, the court calls cause number 2020-0553, the state of Texas versus Fernando Lopez. Announcement of council, please.
David Nunez for the state, Your Honor. State is ready.
Good morning, Your Honor. Jesus Oliva standing in for Mr. Ignacio Estrada, representing Mr. Fernando Ivan Lopez. We're
Mr.
ready.
Lopez, do you see and recognize your attorney, Mr. Olivas, on the screen as your attorney in this case? Mr. Lopez? Mr. Lopez? Okay, and Mr. Olivas, do you see and recognize your client, Mr. Lopez, as the defendant in this case as well?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Let
He's
the
wearing
record-
black and white.
Very good. Let the record reflect that both parties have identified each other. Mr. Lopez, please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Very well. Lower your hand. I need your full name, please.
Fernando Iván López,
Date of birth, sir.
10-3-84,
And where were you born, sir?
a México.
And you are here represented by Mr. Olivas, correct?
Sí,
Mr. Olivas, do you waive formal arraignment in this case?
I do, Your Honor.
Any reason to believe your client is not competent to enter into this plea here today?
No, he's competent.
Mr. Lopez, I need to ask you, sir, have you ever been found incompetent by a court of law or by a doctor?
no,
I find you are competent to enter into this plea here today. I understand you were born in Mexico, so I assume you are not a United States citizen. Is that correct?
es correcto.
Not being a citizen, entering into this plea of guilty, you could face deportation, exclusion from admission to the United States, denial of naturalization under federal law. Sir, do you understand that?
Sí,
Other than the plea bargain, are you pleading guilty because you are guilty and for no other reason?
sí, su señoría.
You are what?
Excuse me, disculpa. No lo escucho.
Okay. Has anybody promised you anything else other than the plea bargain to plead guilty here today?
No,
Is anybody threatening or forcing you to be here?
no,
Are you pleading guilty because you want to, or Mr. Olivas is forcing you?
no. Yo no estoy declarado culpable.
And are you happy with Mr. Olivas' representation of you in this matter?
Sí, estoy de acuerdo.
You see each and every page of States 1, sir. Did you read that document?
Sí,
Did you understand very important rights you've given up? Right to a trial by jury, right to confront witnesses that are brought to testify against you, and the right to bring witnesses to testify in your own behalf. By signing States 1, you've given up those rights, and do you understand that?
sí,
And did you sign this document freely and voluntarily?
sí.
This time does the state wish to make a motion to reduce your range of punishment or category of offense, Mr. Nunez?
Yes, Your Honor. This plea will be proceeding under the provisions of 1244A.
1244A, is there a victim impact statement?
No, Your Honor.
It's a plea agreement.
Your Honor, the plea agreement calls for 140 days confinement, El Paso County Jail, time served.
Is that your understanding of the plea agreement, Mr.? Well, Mr. Olivas, is that your understanding of the plea agreement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and Mr. Lopez, is that your understanding of the plea agreement as well?
Sí,
Are you asking me to accept that agreement, Mr. Lopez?
sí, por favor.
You understand I don't have to accept it, right?
No.
You also, do you understand I don't have to accept that agreement?
This is Sonia.
And you also understand that if I don't accept it, I'll allow you to withdraw your plea. Do you understand that as well?
Sonia.
Range of punishment is 1 year El Paso County Jail and or a $4,000 fine. You understand that?
Sí.
Understanding range of punishment, your rights under the law, the plea agreement, sir, how do you plead?
Goodbye.
Evidence, please.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to admit as State's Exhibit number 1, the plea papers in this case, and the indictment in this case as State's Exhibit number 2. Furthermore, the state would proffer that if this case did go to trial, the state would be able to prove all of the allegations contained in the indictment beyond a reasonable doubt. Your Honor, on the date of offense, what happened was a school principal called police because some students had not, or a student had not been picked up by their mother. So when the mother gets there, officers find out that she has warrants, place her under arrest. She asks that Mr. Lopez basically be allowed to pick up the children. So a police officer goes to pick up Mr. Lopez and is going to give him a ride to the school so he can pick up the student. And as the officer is getting him into his vehicle to transport him to the school, he does a pat down for his safety. And Mr. Lopez consents, and that's where they find the methamphetamine on his person.
Any objections to the evidence as summarized by the state?
No objection, Your Honor.
Any objection to the admission of states 1 and 2, sir?
No, ma'am.
States 1 and 2 will be admitted. At this time, I will accept your guilty plea in the plea agreement. I find that your plea and the agreement have been entered into freely, knowingly, voluntarily. I further find the evidence presented by the state does substantiate a finding of guilt. Therefore, sir, I find you guilty of felony possession of a controlled substance. I hereby sentence you to serve 140 days El Paso County Jail. You will get credit for the time that you have served. Your client is not entitled to an appeal because it is a plea bargain case. If somebody, my laptop is not picking it up, that's why I'm hesitating. I think you put the range of punishment as a state jail facility on the plea papers rather than a 1244A. Does somebody have the plea papers in front of them?
I have them, Judge.
I reviewed the plea papers
Yeah.
last night, and I think it has state jail.
You're correct, Judge. It should be number 5 instead of number 2. That was my fault.
Okay, sir, that has to be corrected and redone.
Okay.
So please, is everybody okay with that being done? Everybody has to re-sign.
Yes, Your Honor, but I guess I'm a little bit confused, Your Honor, because the ones I have on page 2, it has the 1244A in bold. Does that not showing up on yours, Your Honor? On page 2 and right there at the bottom.
Doesn't pick it. Oh, here it is. Waiver of arraignment. On page 2 of the plea papers?
Yes, Your Honor. It should be number 5, range of punishment. I have the 1244A bold with.
Let me see. You circled. 2 is circled.
I
I did
said
not.
2, Judge.
No, but that's what I'm saying. 2 is
Oh,
circled.
okay.
You see how it's confusing?
Judge, can I make an oral motion for amendment that the court allow me to go ahead?
I can allow it, but I think the clerk needs specificity. It says the number 2 is circled.
That's correct.
So you have a number 2, but then you also have a 1244A is not, well, okay. It's there too, but 2 is circled. So can you see the ambiguity in this document?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Castañeda, will you accept this document and an oral thing that says it's going to be a 1244A?
Yes, Judge. And if I recall, I did see the papers that I did ask Mr. Nunez to clarify, and he did relay
Okay.
that it was a 1244A.
You'll accept the paperwork.
Yes, Judge.
So long as I accept the paperwork, I'm good. Okay, just be careful, everybody. Anything else, Mr. Olivas?
That's all. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, sir. Anything else, Mr. Nunez?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You all may be excused. Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
Judge.
Olivas, thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye, sir. Be safe out there. Okay, the next one that was in, I think I let Mr. Roberto Sanchez. Mr. Roberto Sanchez, are we ready for the plea? It's Mr. Diego Rangel. Diego
I'm
Rangel.
ready.
Okay,
I'm ready
good.
to proceed, Judge.
Court calls cause number 2019-4790, City of Texas versus Diego Rangel, and that's when the council please.
Isaac Gutierrez for the state of Texas and the state of
Roberto Sanchez, on behalf of Mr. Rangel, we're ready to proceed as well, Judge.
Well, I think I just want the record to reflect that Mr. Diego Rangel is no relation to me at all, Mr. Sanchez, correct? I think we had this discussion. We had this discussion.
Yes, Judge, we have, and that's correct.
Very good. Okay, we're waiting for Mr. Diego to come in. I don't see him. We're waiting. Very well. Good morning, Mr. Rangel. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay, is the interpreter going to interpret that or not? Mr. Interpreter, are we having issues? Yes, sir. I think everybody right now needs service, sir. That's why we hooked them all up. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Okay, so Mr. Rangel, please raise, well, look at the screen, sir. Do you see and recognize Mr. Sanchez as your attorney in this case?
Sí.
And Mr. Sanchez, do you see and recognize Mr. Rangel as your client and as the defendant in this case?
Yes, Judge, I do.
Very well. Let the record reflect that both have identified and recognized each other. Mr. Rangel, please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Lower your hand, sir. I need your full name, please.
Diego Armando Rangel.
Date of birth.
Septiembre 22 del 2000.
And where were you born?
México.
And you are here represented by Mr. Sanchez, correct?
Así es.
Mr. Sanchez, do you waive formal arraignment?
We waive, Judge.
Any reason to believe your client is not competent to enter into this plea, Mr. Sanchez?
No reason to believe, Your Honor.
I need to ask you, Mr. Rangel, have you ever been found incompetent by a court of law or by a doctor?
No.
I find you are competent to enter into this plea here today. I understand you were born in Mexico. I assume you are not a United States citizen. Is that correct?
Así es.
Not being a citizen, entering into this plea of guilty, you could face deportation, exclusion from admission to the United States, denial of naturalization under federal law. You understand that, sir?
Sí.
Other than the plea bargain, are you pleading guilty because you are guilty and for no other reason?
Así es.
Did somebody promise you something else other than this plea bargain to plead guilty here today?
No.
Is anybody threatening or forcing you to be here?
No.
You know, you plead guilty because you want to, or because Mr. Sanchez is forcing you to plead guilty?
Porque yo quiero.
Are you satisfied with Mr. Sanchez's representation of you in this matter?
Así es.
You signed each and every page of States 1. Did you read that document or did your attorney explain it to you?
Sí.
Did he explain to you and did you understand very important rights you've given up, right to a trial by jury, right to confront witnesses that are brought to testify against you, and the right to bring witnesses to testify in your own behalf? By signing States 1, you've given up those rights, and do you understand that?
Sí.
And did you sign this document freely and voluntarily?
Así es.
At this time, does the state wish to make a motion to reduce your range of punishment or category of offense?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state would like to reduce the charge to man delivery PG1, 1 gram or more, but less than 4 grams, a lesser.
Lesser included. What is the plea agreement?
The plea agreement, Your Honor, is 2 years TDC.
Years TDC. Okay, is that your understanding of the plea agreement, Mr. Sanchez first?
It is, Your Honor.
And Mr. Rangel, is that your understanding of the plea agreement as well?
Así es.
Are you asking me to accept it? You understand I don't have to accept it, right?
Sí.
And you also understand if I don't accept it, I'll give you an opportunity. You can withdraw your plea. You understand that as well? Range of punishment is 2 to 20 years in the penitentiary and or a $10,000 fine. You understand that?
Sí.
Understanding range of punishment, your rights under the law. The plea agreement, sir, how do you plead?
Vale.
Evidence, please, Mr.
Yep.
Gutierrez.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state would like to request the court to take into consideration and admit State's Exhibit number 1 and number 2. And had the state proceeded to trial in this matter, the state would approve beyond a reasonable doubt that on or about the 21st day of August 2019 in the county of El Paso and the state of Texas, Diego Rangel did then and there knowingly possess with the intent to deliver a controlled substance in penalty group 1, namely methamphetamine, in the amount of 1 gram or more, but less than 4 grams. In a quick synopsis of the story, defendant Rangel was one of the 2 occupants inside a Jeep that contained 4 bundles of wrapped narcotics that were wrapped in black electrical tape, which later on field tested positive for methamphetamine and weighed approximately 1,139 grams, not including the cardboard packaging. Labs later tested it, 2 bundles of it, which the approximate weight of that was 513 grams.
Any objection to the evidence summarized by the state, Mr. Sanchez?
No objection, Your Honor.
Any objection to the admission of states 1 and 2, Mr. Sanchez?
No objection either.
States 1 and 2 will be admitted. At this time, I will accept your guilty plea in the plea agreement, sir. I find that your plea and the agreement have been entered into freely, knowingly, voluntarily. I further find the evidence presented by the state does substantiate a finding of guilt. Therefore, I find you guilty of a second-degree manufacturing delivery of a controlled substance. I hereby sentence you to serve 2 years. Texas Department of Criminal Justice, Institutional Division. I want the record to further reflect your client is not entitled to an appeal. It's a plea bargain case, Mr. Sanchez. Anything else? Mr. Sanchez first.
Judge, nothing further.
Anything else, Mr. Gutierrez?
No, ma'am.
Very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Rangel. Best of luck to you, sir. Thank you. You may be excused. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You may be excused.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you may be excused. Now we have Mr. Anthony Gonzalez is present. I don't think we have Castañon yet. The only defense.
Judge, I'm going to cover for
It's
Mr.
gonna be
Castañon.
Renee. Oh,
I'm going to cover for Mr.
It's
Castañon.
Mr. Vasquez, Your Honor.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Okay, so on, let's take care of Isaac Ramos next then, Mr. Vasquez.
Okay, Judge.
We're going to take care of Isaac Ramos. Isaac Ramos does not need an interpreter, Mr. Jesus Fuentes. Okay, so on this one, we're okay. You don't need to interpret, but do we need to change any of the channels and
Isaac.
okay. I do. I do, sir. Yeah. Well, you want me to, well, okay, he's there. Forget it. Well, let's take care of it. Okay. Okay. Annex, can you put it back to English
Yes, ma'am. It's on
channel,
English.
please?
It's on English.
Very good. Thank you. At this time, court calls cause number 2019-6587, the state of Texas versus Isaac Ramos. Announcement of council, please.
David Nunez for the state, Your Honor. State is ready.
Rene Vasquez covering for Felix Castañon. We're ready, Your Honor.
Very well. I don't know, Mr. Ramos, do you recognize Mr. Vasquez as an attorney that works with your attorney, Mr. Castañon, in the public defender's office? Because Mr. Castañon cannot be here today. So do you recognize him as an attorney that works with Mr. Castañon or not? I'm sorry?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And Mr. Vasquez, I asked you the question. You don't recognize Mr. Ramos as the defendant in this case, do you?
No, Judge, I don't.
So what do I do?
I'm covering for him, so if he can just identify himself, and I think that's all we can do, Judge, because I've never met him.
Right.
So, but if he's represented by Mr. Castañon, I'm covering for him, so I have to say that's the client, Judge.
Okay, sir. And I guess Mr. Nunez, no objection to proceeding without really some appropriate identification of each other, of the defendant and the attorney?
I think I'll be okay with it, Your Honor, as long as the defendant has full knowledge of what's going on and he states that on the record, that he's willing to proceed without having met Mr. Vasquez.
Yeah, I agree with that, Judge.
Okay, Mr. Vasquez, you're okay with proceeding and you have no objection?
No, I don't, Judge.
Very well. Okay, Mr. Ramos, please raise your right hand to be sworn, sir. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, sir, lower your hand. I need your full name, please.
Isaac Ramos,
Date of birth,
11/16/99.
and where were you born?
Las Cruces.
And you are here represented by Mr. Vasquez, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Vasquez, do you waive formal arraignment?
I do, Judge.
Any reason to believe your client is not competent to enter into this plea here today?
No, Judge.
Mr. Ramos, have you ever been found incompetent by a court of law or by a doctor?
No, ma'am.
I find you are competent to enter into this plea here today. I understand you were born in New Mexico. I assume you are a United States citizen. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
In case you are not a citizen and you are entering into this plea of guilty, you could face deportation, exclusion from the United States, denial of naturalization under federal law. You understand me?
Yes, ma'am.
Not in the plea bargain, pleading guilty because you are guilty and for no other reason.
Yes, ma'am.
Did somebody promise you something else other than this plea bargain to plead guilty here today?
No, ma'am.
Is anybody threatening, forcing you to be here?
Say that again?
Is anybody threatening or forcing you to be there?
No, ma'am.
Are you plead guilty because you want to, or Mr. Vasquez or Mr. Castañon are forcing you to plead guilty?
No, ma'am.
And are you satisfied with Mr. Castañon's representation of you?
Yes, ma'am.
You've signed it on every page of States 1. Did you read that document?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you understand very important rights you've given up? Right to a trial by jury, right to confront witnesses that are brought to testify against you, agree witnesses to testify in your own behalf by signing States 1. You've given up those rights, and do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you sign this document freely and voluntarily?
Yes, ma'am.
Does this sentence distinguish to make a motion to reduce your range of punishment or category of offense? Mr.
No, Your Honor.
Is there a victim impact statement, sir?
No, Your Honor.
The agreement.
Your Honor, the plea agreement calls for 10 years of deferred probation.
10 years deferred?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Drug counseling, $1,000 fine, 200 hours of community service,
Mhm.
UABA curfew, as well. And Mr. Ramos will also be pleading guilty to a failure to ID case misdemeanor time served, Your Honor.
Very well. Is that your understanding of the plea agreement, Mr. Vasquez?
Yes, Judge.
And Mr. Ramos, is that your understanding of the plea agreement as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you asking me to accept that, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
You understand I don't have to accept it, right?
Right.
You also understand if I don't, I'll allow you to withdraw your plea. You understand that as well?
Yes, ma'am.
The range of punishment you're facing is 2 to 20 years in the penitentiary and or a $10,000 fine. You understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Understanding range of punishment, your rights under the law, sir, the plea agreement, how do you plead?
Guilty.
Evidence.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to admit as State's Exhibit number 1, the plea papers in this case, and the indictment in this case is State's Exhibit number 2. Furthermore, the state would proffer that if this case did go to trial, the state would be able to prove all of the allegations contained in the indictment beyond a reasonable doubt. Your Honor, in this case, on the date of offense, officers were dispatched to an extended stay hotel on a disturbance call. Dispatch, upon talking, alerted officers to defendant and a co-defendant in the back of the hotel. And during their investigation, they locate Mr. Ramos and the co-defendant in this case. And they also locate around their vicinity, there was located a black backpack containing marijuana. Officers, after further investigation, placed both of them under arrest, and then they later locate the cocaine and methamphetamine listed in the indictment on the defendant after he is already arrested and at the police station in a holding cell. And that's an officer basically observes him fidgeting with several plastic bags and in his holding cell, opens it up and discovers the two substances that are listed in the indictment.
Any objection to the evidence summarized by the state, Mr. Vasquez?
Yes, Judge, I agree.
Any objection to the admission of States 1 and 2?
No, Judge.
States 1 and 2 will be admitted. At this time, I will accept your guilty plea in the plea agreement. Sir, I find that your plea and the agreement have been entered into freely, knowingly, voluntarily. I further find the evidence presented by the state does substantiate a finding of guilt. Therefore, however, I am not entering a finding of guilt at this time. Instead, I'm deferring further proceedings. I'm placing you on community supervision for 10 years, sir. Terms and conditions of your probation include drug counseling, $1,000 fine, 200 hours community service, UABA testing, 9 to 6 a.m. curfew. Mr. Ramos, I think you have a drug problem, but do you think you have a drug problem that you want me to try to help you with?
No, ma'am, I think jail will help me a lot.
Okay. Okay, he's gonna report 2 times a month with 24 hours notice for UAs. You understand how that works, Mr. Ramos?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you're doing drugs, we're gonna catch you because you're not gonna know which day, which time, which week you're gonna report. And you're gonna do it 2 times a month, sir, 24 hours notice.
Sounds good.
Okay, sir. Now, you were born in New Mexico. Do you live in El Paso?
No, ma'am.
Where do you?
New Mexico, Las Cruces.
Okay. Are we gonna transfer this case, Mr. Vasquez, or what do you want to do?
I'm not sure, Judge, but if he lives in Las Cruces, we're going to transfer the case.
Are we okay with transferring the case, Mr. Nunez?
Court's discretion, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
Court's discretion.
What's the what?
At the court's discretion, Your Honor. I'm no objection.
Okay, let me ask you, Mr. Ramos, do you work in Las Cruces too, or will you be looking for a job in Las Cruces?
Yes, ma'am, I work in Las Cruces.
Okay, sir, so it'll be better for you if your whole case is transferred to New Mexico, right? And you report there, that's more convenient for you because I want you to succeed.
Right, yes, ma'am.
Okay, sir, so we're gonna transfer to New Mexico, Mr. Artemio.
Judge, quick question for the defendant. Does he have a residence in New Mexico already? Or has he been residing in Texas?
Mr. Ramos, answer. What?
I do have a residence in Las Cruces.
Okay, Judge, maybe right now, we'll ask him all those questions because we're gonna need all that information so we can transfer his case.
Okay, but we'll do that. Anything else? Anything else, Mr. Vasquez?
No, Judge.
Anything else, Mr. Nunez?
Yes, Your Honor. We will also be dismissing as part of this plea agreement 2 misdemeanor drug possession cases. I did just email yourself, Mr. Vasquez, and Becky that dismissal, Your Honor. Those dismissals, 2 of them.
Very good. Okay. Very well.
I sent them as well, Your Honor. So
Thank you.
now you have 2 separate sets of dismissals.
Thank you for letting me know. That's okay. Okay, that's good. Okay, I told you your client's entitled to an appeal. It's a plea bargain case, right, Mr. Vasquez? I don't remember if I told you that.
No, I
In case
think-
I didn't, again. Mr. Vasquez, anything else?
No, Judge.
Mr. Nunez, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Good luck to you, Mr. Ramos. Thank you very much. You may be excused. Now, the other one we have, I just let Mr. Castañon in. The other one, this gentleman needs an interpreter, Mr. Cifuentes. It is Jaime Joel Lechuga Ramos.
That's mine.
Oh, that is yours?
That is mine, yes.
Oh, okay. Mr. Castañon, then I don't think we need.
He's late.
And mine, Your Honor. I've got Isaac Ramos.
We just did.
Split him.
Oh, okay.
We just split him. Goodbye. Have a good life. We have Mr. Anthony.
Vasquez. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Anthony Gonzalez has one of Lechuga Ramos's, and the public defender has another one.
Correct, Judge. I don't know how that happened, but yeah.
I know it's.
I don't either.
Everybody's so anxious to appoint an attorney. That's the problem. Okay. Let's get on the record. We need an interpreter. Mr. Vasquez, are you on the right station? You have to put Mr. Vasquez and Mr. Anthony Gonzalez on the globe in the bottom. You have to put English channel.
I am right now, Judge.
Okay, and then you have to put mute original audio. I'm speaking to both of you, Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Vasquez.
I think I did. I just did, Judge.
Okay, Mr.
I have English, Judge. What is the other thing that I needed to do?
The other thing you need to do is then press the EN icon after you have English and put mute original audio.
Got it.
Very good. Okay. Now, court calls number 2018-28, 2860 and 2020-0970, the state of Texas versus Jaime Joel Ramos. Announcement of council, please.
David Nunez for the state, Your Honor. State is ready.
Rene Vasquez for the defense.
Anthony Gonzalez for the defense. We're ready.
Very well. Mr. Ramos, do you see and recognize both your attorneys on the screen as your attorneys in both cases of yours?
Sí.
And Mr. Vasquez, do you recognize Mr. Ramos as your client and the defendant in your case?
Yes, Judge.
And Mr. Gonzalez, do you see and recognize Mr. Ramos as your client and the defendant in your case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. Let the record reflect that everybody has recognized everyone. Mr. Ramos, please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear, sir, the testimony? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Very well. Lower your hand, sir. I need your full name for the record, please.
Jaime Joel Ramos Lechuga.
Your name, sir. I need somebody to give me his name. Date of birth.
0613 del 94.
And where were you born, sir?
México.
And you are here represented by Mr. Gonzalez in one case and Mr. Vasquez in the other case, correct?
Sí.
Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Vasquez, do you waive formal arraignment?
We do, Judge.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any reason to believe your client is not competent to enter into this plea here today, Mr. Vasquez?
No, Judge.
Mr. Gonzalez?
No, Your Honor. No reason.
Mr. Ramos, have you ever been found incompetent by a court of law or by a doctor?
Perdón.
I find you are competent to enter into this plea here today. I understand you were born in Mexico, so I'm assuming you're not a United States citizen. Am I correct?
Sí, correcto.
Not being a citizen, entering into these pleas of guilty, you could face deportation, exclusion from admission to the United States, denial of naturalization under federal law. You understand that?
Sí.
Other than the plea bargain, are you pleading guilty because you are guilty and for no other reason?
Sí.
Did somebody promise you something else other than this plea bargain to plead guilty to today?
No.
Is anybody threatening or forcing you to be here?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you want to, or are either of your attorneys forcing you to plead guilty?
Porque yo quiero.
Are you satisfied with both your attorneys' representation in these matters?
Muy satisfecho.
Good. You've signed each and every page of States 1. Did you read that document in both cases?
Sí.
Did you understand very important rights you've given up in both cases? You've given up the right to a trial by jury, the right to confront witnesses that are brought to testify against you, and the right to bring witnesses to testify in your own behalf. You understand by signing
Yes.
States 1, you've given up all those rights in this case, correct?
Sí.
And did you sign this document freely and voluntarily?
Sí.
At this time, does the state wish to make a motion to reduce your range of punishment or category of offense, Mr. Nunez?
No, Your Honor.
Is there a victim impact statement?
No, Your Honor.
What are the plea agreements in both cases?
Yes, Your Honor. In the cause number ending in 0970, the plea agreement calls for 5 years deferred probation or national probation, anger management, drug counseling, a deadly weapon finding, to wit, scissors, family violence finding, UABA, curfew, no offensive contact with CW, Elisa Sanchez, and to run
Okay, Elisa Sanchez, what else?
drug counseling,
Mhm.
And the same, and then to run concurrent with the cause number ending in 2860, Your Honor. Both.
To run concurrent, I think the plea papers on 2860,
Oh, Your Honor.
2-year state jail.
Yes, Your Honor, and I apologize. I do, that's my mistake. On that case, in 2860, the plea agreement calls for 2 years confinement, probated for 3 years under foreign national probation. I apologize, Your Honor.
So it's
And
2 years state jail, 3 years straight probation,
correct, Your Honor.
and all the other terms and conditions are running concurrent as well.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Is that your understanding, Mr. Vasquez, in your case of the agreement?
Yes, Judge.
Mr. Gonzalez, is that the understanding of the plea agreement in your case?
It is, Your Honor.
And Mr. Ramos, is that your understanding of the plea agreements in both cases?
Okay.
Are you asking me to accept those agreements?
See?
You understand I don't have to accept them, right? You also understand that if I don't accept them, I'll allow you to withdraw your plea. You understand that as well. In 2860, your range of punishment is not less than 180 days, no more than 2 years in a state jail facility and or a $10,000 fine. You understand that range of punishment? In 0970, you understand your range of punishment to be 2 to 20 years in the penitentiary and or a $10,000 fine. You understand that? Understanding both ranges of punishments, your rights under the law, the plea agreements, how do you plead both cases, all counts? Evidence, please, Mr. Nunez.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state would seek to admit as State's Exhibit number 1 in both cases, the plea papers for each respective case, and the respective indictments in each respective case as State's Exhibit number 2. Furthermore, the state would proffer that if these cases did go to trial, the state would be able to prove all the allegations contained in both indictments beyond a reasonable doubt. Your Honor, on the date of offense in the cause number ending in 2860, there was a traffic stop conducted for expired tags. Upon approaching the vehicle, officers smelled marijuana coming from the car, and they later find out that the defendant had a warrant out of New Mexico. Officers then conduct a search and locate the marijuana inside the vehicle. And the cause number ending in 0970, Your Honor, officers were dispatched to the home on a assault family violence call, and they meet with the complaining witness. She basically stated that the defendant came over and started knocking loudly on the door. When the CW opened the door, she stated that the defendant lunged forward with a pair of metal scissors in his hand, cutting her on her forearm. The CW then ran out of the apartment and called police.
Any objection to the evidence is summarized? Have you done both cases? You
Yes,
summarized both cases, right? Any objection to the summarization of evidence in your case, Mr. Vasquez?
No, Judge.
And any objection to the admission of states 1 and 2 in your case?
No objections, Judge.
Mr. Gonzalez, any objection to admissions of states 1 and 2 in your case?
No, Judge.
And any objection to states 1 and 2 being admitted, and a summary of the evidence as well, correct? No objection on either.
No objection, Judge.
Very well. With that being said, I will
Correct.
very well. I will accept your guilty pleas and the plea agreements, Mr. Ramos. I find that your pleas and agreements have been entered into freely, knowingly, voluntarily. I further find the evidence presented by the state does substantiate findings of guilt. However, in cause number 0970, I am suspending further proceedings. I am not entering a finding of guilt, but in 2018, 2860, I am entering a finding of guilt, possession of a controlled substance, a state jail. In the terms and in that case, I am sentencing you to 2 years state jail facility. However, said sentence will be suspended. You will be placed on community supervision for 3 years. Terms and conditions of your probation in both cases, which are to run concurrent, is anger management, drug counseling, family violence finding in 2020-0970. A deadly weapon finding in that case as well, to wit, scissors. UABA testing every reporting period, 9 to 6 a.m. curfew. You'd have no offensive contact with Elisa Sanchez. You will do drug counseling. Both cases are foreign national status as well. Now, both attorneys, your clients are entitled to an appeal. They're plea bargain cases. And on the one case, Mr. Vasquez, yours, he's waived it because he opted for deferred, okay? Anything else in this particular case first, Mr. Vasquez?
Yes, Judge. Misdemeanor case will be dismissed as well, Judge.
Mr. Nunez, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. I just sent the email with the dismissal to you, yourself, Becky, as well as Mr. Vasquez.
Very well. Okay. Mr. Gonzalez, anything else, sir?
Nothing further, Judge.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Ramos, good luck to you, sir. We hope we don't see you back, sir. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ramos. Thank you. Have a good
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Vasquez, you may be excused. Thank you so much. I think you participated a little bit earlier. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Mr. Vasquez, have a good weekend. Mr. Gonzalez, be safe and have a good weekend as well.
Thank you, Judge. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you. We did a hard week's work. Bye. Even though it's fun, but it's a hard day's work. I'm getting off. Mr. Cifuentes, thank you, sir, for everything. Appreciate you, sir. We did good today, right? We all behaved and did good.